right, so obviously in 1960, Senator John F. Kennedy was elected president. And in his term, he cut taxes pretty dramatically, all right, because he wanted to give more money back to the folks. So the tax withholding reduced from 18 to 14%. And then corporate tax went way down from 52 to 47. It's still very high, but the corporations had a lot different rules. They didn't have to report a lot of things. So Kennedy was a tax cutter. He was a populist. You never get that in the Democratic Party now. Okay, Bill Clinton comes in. He signed the welfare for work. If you wanted federal welfare, you had to look for a job. And abortion should be safe and rare. Rare, R-A-R-E, Bill Clinton. And Barack Obama, as I said, many social issues. He wanted legal immigration. He deported more migrants, President Obama did, than any other president. Now, the Democratic platform is, hey, everybody who snuck in here, overstayed their visa, everybody can become a citizen. So I wanted to know how that happened. And there's an interesting book coming out. It's called Polarized by Degrees: How the Diploma Divide and the Culture War Transformed American Politics, by a professor, Dr. Matt Grossman, who teaches at Michigan State University, and he joins us now from East Lansing. So I'm looking forward to reading your book because I am perplexed. My mother voted for JFK. My father voted for Nixon in 1960. And the Democratic Party, even though LBJ did the Great Society and all that, it wasn't a radical left party until recently. What happened?
Well, there has been a huge change in the demographic base of the Democratic Party. As recently as the 1990s, half of Bill Clinton's votes came from white voters without college degrees. Today, that's down to a quarter of Biden's votes, whereas white voters with college degrees have moved from about 20% of the Democratic voting base to now more than a third. And those trends have been going up over that entire period that you just discussed and are linked to the increasing dominance of social and cultural issues in our politics.
Now, has that been good for the Democratic Party or a neutral or a negative?
Well, the parties have been at rough parity since that time. So whatever is good and bad, I would say, has canceled out in an electoral sense. But it definitely poses a problem for Democrats to get a national majority because they still rely on votes of culturally traditional voters. And yet they keep embracing new social change.
Okay, but most Americans don't have college degrees, four-year degrees. They're working people. And the working people, you're saying, have gone over to the Republican Party? Is that where they are?
Actually, the Republican Party has always been dominated by white voters without college degrees. So part of what's happening is just educational attainment is increasing over time. And the minority vote share is increasing over time. And the Republican coalition actually looks about the same between those three. Another way of putting that is that the Republican Party is staying the same while the nation is becoming more educated and more diverse.
Okay, but the Hispanic voters, and there are far more of them than African Americans, are tending to be more conservative now. Is that bad news for the Democratic Party?
It's bad news if they vote their ideology. Hispanic and Black voters have been much less likely to follow their ideological self-definition in their voting. So another way of thinking about it is that the swing Black and Hispanic voters are much more conservative than the swing white voters, even though overall minority voters are more liberal than white voters. So the swing voter in this election may come down to a Black voter who is conservative in self-definition, who has conservative positions on social issues and economic issues, but still maintains a social tie to the Democratic Party.
And is a gender split too among African Americans, where the women are going big time for Kamala Harris? There's a new study out today about that. But the men are, more men are looking at Donald Trump. Is that a factor?
There has been an increased gender divide, not only in the United States, but across democratic countries. And it is very much tied to this rise in cultural issues relative to economic issues. So the more that politics is about culture and social issues relative to economic issues, the bigger gender divide that we're likely to see.
Is it just abortion that's driving women into the liberal precincts?
No, women are more liberal on environmental issues, on social issues of all kinds, race and gender among them. So it's not just abortion. There's a broad gender gap across cultural and social issues.
But you would think in
And
America.
women are.
Go ahead.
I was also just going to say women are also more highly educated than ever before. The college educated population is as geared toward women now as it was geared toward men before Title IX in the 1970s. So many
Well, that's
more
a good
women.
thing. I mean, look, anybody who can access higher education, in my opinion, should do so. But the Democratic platform is corrosive to the family, and you would think that most women, in particular, wouldn't want their children to be subject to state dictums over their parental dictums. That I don't know if that has actually sunk in, Professor, that part of this Democratic platform is basically taking parental authority away. I don't know if that's sunk in because it doesn't make sense that mothers and women would want that.
The vast majority of voters, including women, are between the Democratic and Republican platforms. So certainly that just because women are more culturally liberal than men doesn't mean that they would endorse the Democratic platform.
Now, I don't think they even know about it. And finally, what's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And now I'll narrow that question down because we don't have 10 hours. I'm very highly educated. And I understand economics, I understand social mores, I understand who the politicians are. I know most of them personally. There is no question in my mind that the Democratic Party, as it stands today in Chicago, is a destructive force to the traditions of this country. No question in my mind. And nobody can beat me on a debate. Nobody. So what's wrong with me? Why am I not gravitating toward the Democratic Party?
Well, this is a broader issue because obviously elites of all kinds are highly educated. So members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, are 95% college educated. Most of them now have graduate degrees. The people in the media, people in educational institutions, people in nonprofits, in the corporate world are all very highly educated and increasingly taking on the culturally liberal views of college educated liberals.
So
that doesn't mean it's everybody. That doesn't mean it's everybody. But it does mean that those people who are in those institutions but find themselves disagreeing with the consensus do develop a chip on their shoulder and want to point it out to the rest. So you have a lot of
there's also peer pressure. There's peer pressure in a lot of, like you certainly know that at Michigan State, there's peer pressure to think a certain way. I mean, my alma mater, Harvard and Boston University, overwhelmingly liberal there, overwhelmingly. And if you don't toe that line, then your career is going to be in jeopardy. So there's that factor as well. The book, again, is Polarized by Degrees by Matt Grossman. I'm going to read that book, Professor, and it's very nice of you to help us out this evening. Thank you very much. As students head back to the classroom, many families are reevaluating where their children really are in the education field. Parents and students alike are questioning whether their current educational environment truly supports their values. If this resonates with you, the Herzog Foundation is here to help. Discover a wealth of resources for transitioning from public schools to Christian or even homeschool. The Herzog Foundation is your go-to guide for finding the right fit for your child's educational journey. The Lion, the Herzog Foundation's award-winning online publication, is a beacon of truth. In a complex educational landscape, it keeps you informed with timely and reliable updates on education, parenting, and understanding what's happening in public schools today. Equip your family with knowledge and support with daily and weekly newsletters by signing up at readlion.com/Bill. All right, now the polls are tied. Real Clear Average got Harris at 47.4, Trump at 46.9. Every poll comes in, it's this, it's that. Let's just say it's tied. Joining us now from Alexandria, Virginia, is Dustin Olson. He's a pollster for American Pulse Research and Polling. They work for both Republicans and Democrats. And he hosts a podcast, Political Trade Secrets. Oh, we love that. We love trade secrets on this program. Okay, so you just did a poll, American Pulse, right? 1,035 likely voters, and likely voters is the category you should be in. Republican 40, Democrat 37, Independent 20, fair sampling. And the first question was this. Would you say the country is generally headed in the right or wrong direction? Right direction 27, wrong 58. So if that's the case, Dustin, it's 58 to 27. How can Harris be tied with Trump?
It's really quite amazing, actually, as I've been going through the summer and as a pollster, and you're tracking things, starting actually with the Manhattan conviction and then ending up with the debate and then with the assassination attempt and with RNC and then Biden dropping out. There's been so many historic things. It's really been very difficult to actually poll and not have your poll completely thrown out. So after about a week of Kamala Harris being in the race, we thought we'd go into the field and see just kind of where the American people has ended up. And one thing that's clear to me that has had an impact is her favorability. Actually, about a month ago, she was less popular than both Biden and Trump, and she's now more popular than both of them. Biden hasn't changed much. Trump has actually increased his favorability ever since the assassination attempt, but she's had a really big bump. And I do think it's largely based off of the fawning media coverage. In our survey, we track where people get their news. And if you look at kind of the legacy media, it makes up about 50% of the electorate gets their information from there. And I think that's largely what it was. Also, to contrast, you look at Joe Biden, where he was a month ago, we were starting to see the bottom fall out, and you had states like New Hampshire, New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia that were starting to come into play. And if that happened, it would have been a whack-a-mole scenario for the Democrats, where they just couldn't have kept up with all these competitive states. And ultimately, having somebody who wasn't Biden was a big contrast for Democrats. And I do see some intensity and energy back with Democrats, as well as the improved favorability, which as a pollster, we think that's fairly predictive as to where things are going.
Okay.
I would expect it to have a little bit
I think that's logical, but I think you're leaving out the skin color vote.
The potentially, though, in our survey, 22.3% of African Americans are supporting Donald Trump, which I was quite shocked at, actually, post Kamala Harris joining the race.
So Harris coming up in the favorability zone, who has shifted into her liking her more than they did? It's not people of color?
Yeah. So there's going to be some of that, though we also had Hispanics where Trump's winning by 5%. And we really worked hard to have a representative sample of minorities. I think it's largely people that weren't really participating that are now more energized. Also, you have postgraduates who were pretty, postgraduates, anybody who has anything above a college degree. That's where a lot of the intensity is for her, and they seem to be jazzed up about it.
I don't want to get too technical about it, but the surge, I think, has 2 or 3 points of skin color voting in it. Yeah. Now, I'd love to see a survey on whether Americans understand what Kamala Harris is promoting. See, my theory is they don't understand what this Harris-Walz ticket is. They couldn't understand it if, as I spelled out in my talking points memo, it's so bad for the working class family and for individual freedom. I mean, it's off the chart bad. When you're the governor of Minnesota and most of your constituency are working class farming people, and you're the 5th highest tax state in the union, it's just inconceivable. And I don't think most people understand that. I don't want to be arrogant about it, but the dumb vote I think, is more substantial than it's ever been in modern history.
Potentially, when it comes to policy, and I think I've seen you talk about this quite a bit. Really, Republicans should be focused on policy. We tracked, inflation, the economy, immigration, and the border, also abortion, and really on those first two issues, inflation and immigration. Donald Trump has a majority of Americans trusting him better to handle that over
Big
Kamala
time.
Harris. There's
Let me
a
give you,
slight
let me just give
advantage
you
on
the
abortion for her.
Yeah, let me give you the data to the folks that you assembled. So, who do you trust better to handle the economy and inflation? Trump 51, Harris 45. That's a pretty high number for Harris, though.
Yeah.
I mean, people are paying 20, 25% more now than they did when Trump was in office for essentials. Then you have securing the border. Trump 54, Harris 42. Now, this is the number that comes into play in the dumb vote. Kamala Harris is not going to secure the border, ever. She's going to let all these foreign nationals in, and the American taxpayer is going to pick up their education, health, and welfare costs. And 42% of Americans don't know that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting on the immigration issue. We also asked the question about people's approval of the Biden-Harris administration on the border. And the disapproval is higher than the support for Trump handling that, which tells me that there is a difference between that they've been able to give themselves enough daylight between the Biden-Harris administration and the Harris candidacy. And I do think there's going to be a closing of that difference. But right now they've given themselves enough daylight that she can kind of start fresh.
The media is giving it to them. They haven't given themselves. The media is peddling these lies that, Harris did X, Y, and Z. Final thing you have is foreign policy. Trump 49, Harris 47. So we had no wars of any, consequence under Trump for 4 years. Now we got Ukraine, Middle East blowing up, Afghanistan embarrassment, all under Trump Harris. And 47% of half the people think that the Democrats do a better job in foreign policy. Again, this is the only explanation, is the dumb vote. I don't think there's any other explanation on earth, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I think it's largely based on the media. Your media gives you your reality for the most part. And if half of America is getting their media from sources that are telling them, that she's great, she'll be great on foreign policy, she'll be great on the economy, et cetera, they're going to start moving in that direction. Now, one thing that I found extremely fascinating from our poll, we decided to ask people about the cognitive cover-up, the idea that the Biden-Harris White House and their allies in the media have been covering up the cognitive decline of the president for the last few years. And 61% of people said that they agreed with that idea, and even 47% strongly agreed with it, which my hope is that gives some sense that maybe people are seeing behind the curtain and just how a lot of this impacts public opinion and how the country is being run, and that ultimately this could actually be a pretty big factor in the election.
All right. When is your next survey?
We'll do another one in August, late August, to see how things go after the DNC. Right. And I think that's going to be the next big move in the campaign.
Well, we'll definitely. I'm going to be off the last week in August, but as soon as I get back after Labor Day, we get you on, and we really appreciate it, Dustin. Thanks very much for taking the time today. Right.
Thank you.
By now, you have heard me talk about Delta Rescue. They are a fantastic organization that helps rescue animals from the wilderness. You know, I'm a dog lover, so is Leo Grillo, the founder of Delta Rescue. It is his life's mission to provide everlasting care for these once abandoned animals. I myself have donated to Delta Rescue. Do you believe it is part of man's duty to care for dogs and horses, the animals that so much of our history is tied to? If so, please consider making a donation or consult your advisor about leaving a gift in your will or trust. There can be some tax advantages, and it's a great way to help Delta Rescue accomplish their mission. So please visit deltarescue.org to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Have you ever been buried in debt, piles of overdue bills, threatening phone calls, and it just won't stop? Done with Debt is your way out. They have developed aggressive new strategies to end your debt permanently. Done with Debt tirelessly negotiates with your creditors to lower or even forgive what you owe. And they do it all without bankruptcy or new loans. Done with Debt has unique strategies to get you out of debt faster. But you need to hurry because some debt solutions are time sensitive. Visit donewithdebt.com and talk with one of their debt relief strategists for free. You have nothing to lose except your debt. Go to donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Media madness. This is a really interesting story. Remember this woman, Cassidy Hutchinson? She had a book, all right, and it sold a lot of copies. I know that because Killing the Witches was up against her. Now, Witches ultimately sold a lot more copies than she did. But out of the gate, she said, did very well because she accused Donald Trump of grabbing the wheel of the presidential limousine and fighting a Secret Service agent because Trump wanted to go to the Capitol. And according to Hutchinson, he wanted to encourage this crazy thing that happened on January 6th. Hutchinson was a low-level staffer in the Trump administration. She writes all this garbage. I knew it was garbage from the jump, okay? Here's what I said. Go. The most important accusation was from this Cassidy Hutchinson. Now, we've done some investigating. It would be physically impossible for a president or any human being, sitting in the back seat of a limousine to reach across and grab the steering wheel. It's impossible, physically impossible. You can't do it. Okay. And that was true. But that's not what the hate Trump media told you. Roll the tape.
President Trump ordering them to take him to Capitol Hill, and when they would not do so because they did not believe it was secure, among other reasons, President Trump, according to these Secret Service agents who relayed this to Cassidy Hutchinson, lunged at the wheel and then lunged at the throat and clavicle of his Secret Service agent, Robert Engel. It was devastating testimony, a portrait of a president who was completely and utterly out of control.
And it was a lie. And Tapper's the worst. I just thought I'd rub that in. You know that, I'm sure. So now the Inspector General of the Secret Service, Joseph Kufari, based on more than 100 interviews of every Secret Service agent around at that time, okay, has said the whole thing is bogus. It never happened. This is the Secret Service. This is the Inspector General, okay? He was in charge of investigating this stuff. All right, so how many lies is a corporate media going to be able to get away with? Because nobody's going to report this Inspector General thing. You know, it sickens me that A woman can make a lot of money peddling a falsehood, that B, CNN and Tapper can pick it up and spit it out, and they weren't the only ones. Almost every corporate media TV operation did, okay? And C, that it takes this long for the Inspector General, who could have done this in a month, you might say, no. It's awful. Our system is so corrupt. I'm not cynical. I'm fact-based. It is corrupt. The media is corrupt, and the federal government is corrupt. Okay, smart life. So how did we get here? How did we get here in 2024 to such a corrupt place? Well, on a political side, it was an evolution throughout the presidents, different presidents. And I've written a book, as you know, called Confronting the Presidents, all right? No spin assessments from Washington to Biden. It's out in about a month, September 10th. But the audio is already not available, but it's been made. And I want to run a minute of the audio for confronting the presidents in the Smart Life. And I'll tell you why it's in the Smart Life. Okay? Go.
George Washington gets right to work. His first task is defining what it means to be president. Problems quickly mount. America has a massive national debt from the Revolutionary War, no standing army, and a navy that has no ships. Yet the greatest headache George Washington endures is the hand-picked group of men he has chosen to advise him. This bickering cabinet of 4 politicians includes Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of War Henry Knox, and Attorney General Edmund Randolph. Jefferson and Hamilton in particular loathe each other. At issue is whether the federal government should be a strong central power, as Hamilton believes, or if the states should wield the most strength, as in Jefferson's point of view. This debate will continue for generations to come. For now, Alexander Hamilton will win this argument, and it is George Washington who casts the deciding vote.
And so we take each president, 45 men, and we tell you who was corrupt, who wasn't, and how the corruption evolved. And right now, I'll submit to you, we're not at the top level of corruption in Washington. We're not there, because there were worse presidents and unbelievable corruption in some of the administration. We are in the media. Media's never been more corrupt. So you are going to get so much out of confronting the presidents. And it all pertains to today. All of it. You will learn something on every page, and it's entertaining. It's fun to read. You take it to the beach. Okay? So pre-order on BillO'Reilly.com, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books. Thank you for watching the No Spin News. To watch the full episode anytime on BillO'Reilly.com, please sign up to become a premium or concierge member. Visit BillO'Reilly.com to sign up and start watching today.